Welcome back, everybody, to Wiki Wasteland. This is kind of going to be my chill channel, where I talk about Wikipedia articles as I read them. It's like doing commentary reaction, but Wikipedia articles, you know? And it's chill. And we're going to learn some stuff, because I don't know about these things that I'm reading. And you don't have to have watched episode 1 to watch this episode. This is episode 2, but I'm going to call this the Cowboy series. We're going to talk about cowboys in this series. We're going to have so many series, and we're going to come back to them. You should hit that like button and leave a comment, man. Might as well subscribe while you're at it. But I'm telling you, the comment is the most important part. I don't care about anything else. Leave a comment about anything. Multiple comments. That'd be great. I'll reply to them. I reply to all the comments. So leave one. Or leave my channel. Get out. I don't want you here. I'm just kidding. You don't have to, I guess. Yes, you do. You definitely want to stay tuned, because I got some major nerd stuff coming up. I'm going to talk about World War II, and I'm going to talk about the history of software. I'm going to do a software series. That's right, because I'm a huge computer nerd. So let's just get into the Wyatt Earp. Earp loses reappointment. And I'm using context clues to figure out it's in Cochise County in the Old West. Earp served as deputy sheriff for Eastern Pima County, or Pima County, for only, I'm going to say Pima, for only 3 months. The region was strongly Republican. Republicanism was way different back then, too. It's not the same Republicanism that is today. The region was strongly Republican, and Bob Paul had been expected to defeat Scheibel. Earp was a Republican and believed that he would continue in the job. Given how fast Eastern Pima County was growing, many expected that it would soon be split off into its own county, with Tombstone as its seat. Earp hoped to win the job as the new county sheriff and continue receiving 10% of all tax money collected. Woo! That's a lot. That is a lot. Southern Pacific was the major landholder, so tax collection was a relatively easy process. In 1882, the Cochise County Sheriff earned $24,000. That's more than I've ever earned in a year, by the way. That's crazy. Equivalent to $782,000 in 2024. I mean, even if it was the same, I have never made that amount of money in a year. But that's kind of my own doing, because I don't care about money. I only care about the community, so I found community where we don't need money. Anyway, Earp resigned from the sheriff's office on November 9th, 1880, and Scheibel immediately appointed Johnny Behan as the new deputy sheriff for Eastern Pima County. I hate these names, man. Names are terrible. Maybe we should change them, give them better names. Behan had considerably more political experience than Earp, as he had served as Yavapai County Sheriff from 1871 to 1873. He had been elected to the Arizona Territorial Legislature twice, representing Yavapai Country or County. What? Yavapai Country in the 7th Territorial... Okay, I think it's Yavapai Country. In the 7th Territorial Legislature in 1873, and Mojave County in the 10th in 1879. Behan moved to the Northwest Arizona Territory, where he served as the Mojave County Recorder in 1877, and then Deputy Sheriff Mojave County at Gillett in 1879. Behan wins the election. That's not good. Oh, this is going to send Earp down a really, really dark path, I think. Earp and Behan applied for the new position of Cochise County Sheriff, which paid the office holder 10% of the fees and taxes collected. That's so fucking insane. As did the Pima County Sheriff job. Earp thought that he had a good chance to win because he was the former undersheriff in the region and a Republican, like Arizona Territorial Governor John C. Fremont. However, Behan had greater political experience and influence in Prescott. Earp later testified at the OK Corral hearing that he and Behan had made a deal. He said that Behan and he agreed that if Earp withdrew his application, Behan would appoint him as undersheriff Behan received the appointment in February 1881, but he did not keep his end of the bargain and instead chose Harry Woods as undersheriff, who was a prominent Democrat. Uh-oh. Even back then, it was Democrats versus Republicans, man. This is where the cult started. Behan testified, I'm talking both sides are cults, by the way. I already know there's going to be a bunch of freaks that are going to be like, oh, you're a Democrat? You say a Democrat's a cult? You're in a cult. Fuck you and your political shit. Behan testified at first that he had not made any deal with Earp, although he later admitted that he had failed. He said that he broke his promise to Earp because of an incident which occurred shortly before his appointment, when Earp learned that Ike and Billy Clanton had one of his prize horses which had been stolen more than a year before. Hey, man. Don't be stealing prize horses. That's crazy. It ends up there. Earp and Holiday rode to Clanton Ranch near Charleston to recover. I wasn't expecting a normal name, so I hesitated to recover the horse and overtook Behan along the way, who was riding in a wagon. Behan also was heading to the ranch to serve an electioneering subpoena on Ike Clanton. Accounts differ as to what happened next, but Earp testified that Billy Clanton gave up the horse when Earp arrived at the ranch, even before being presented with ownership papers. According to Behan's testimony, however, Earp had told the Clantons that Behan was on his way to arrest them for horse theft. That apparently was a huge thing back then. There wasn't carjackings, there was horse theft. The incident embarrassed the Clantons and Behan later testified that he did not want to work with Earp and chose Woods instead. Relationship with Sadie Marcus. Later in life, Josephine Sarah Marcus aggressively protected hers and Wyatt's privacy while in Tombstone. Marcus was deliberately vague about this period, causing modern researchers to question what she was hiding. She said that she first visited Tombstone as part of the Pauline Markham theater troupe on December 1st, 1879, for a one-week engagement. But modern researchers have not found any record that she was ever part of the theater company. The many contradictions in her story have led to considerable speculation about her past. Well, shit. Yep. I think everything about her is probably not true. This person was good, knew how to mess up the history. Or maybe it just happened that way. I don't know. Researchers have identified 2 women with similar names in the same region of the Arizona territory whose lives bear many striking parallels. Yeah, probably a lot of people lived similar lives back then because, I mean, there wasn't much to do. There wasn't, like, communities to get involved in. Everybody was just kind of the same boring humans just trying to survive because it was hard to get resources. Anyway, Sadie Mansfield and Sadie Marcus both made a stagecoach journey from San Francisco to Prescott, Arizona territory. Both traveled with a black woman named Julia. Okay, well, that's pretty coincidental, you know. Both were sexual partners with Behan. Wow, okay. Both were 19 years old, born in New York City, and had parents from Prussia. You know, that's pretty specific, but I could still see how it would be coincidental. The only difference noted in the 1880 census is in their occupations. The Sadie who lived in San Francisco is listed as at home, while the Sadie in Tip Top is recorded as a courtesan. What is a courtesan? What is a courtesan? A woman of a royal or noble court, the mistress of a royal or noble, a prostitute. Okay. Well, I'm guessing that she was a prostitute. Why didn't you just say that? Marcus said that her parents hid her activities, and they may have been covering for her when the census taker was a neighbor who knew the family. Behan owned a saloon in Tip Top, Arizona. That's a crazy name for a town, though. Oh, it's a ghost town now. Alright. Where he maintained a prostitute named Sadie Mansfield, and he moved to Tombstone in September 1880. See what I mean? Yep, I was right. Prostitute. You just should have said that out the gate. Sadie was a popular nickname for Sarah. I didn't know that. And prostitutes commonly change their first names. Sadie Mansfield, the tip-top prostitute. Yeah, now they go with, like, crazy names. Like Luna. Or Candy. That's a popular one. Candy. Where was I? I'm just going to read this part. Sadie Mansfield The tip-top prostitute may have returned to San Francisco and then rejoined Behan in Tombstone in September 1880 as Sadie Marcus, where they continued their relationship. In early 1881, Sadie found Behan in bed with the wife of a friend, and kicked him out, although she still used the Behan surname through mid-year. Don't know what that means. That's a crazy sentence. Somebody explain that one to me. I don't want to look it up. Wyatt was in a relationship with Maddie Blaylock. I've heard this name. Where have I heard? Mookie Blaylock. That's where I've heard that name. That was a basketball player and also Pearl Jam's first name before they changed it to Pearl Jam. I think that was Pearl Jam. Modern researchers have found Blaylock listed as Earp's wife in the June 1880 census. She suffered from severe headaches and became addicted to laudanum. I don't know what that is. A tincture of opium containing approximately 10% powdered opium by weight. Laudanum is prepared by dissolving extracts from the opium, poppy, and alcohol. Ethanol. Okay. So she was an alcoholic and an opium addict. A commonly used opiate and painkiller, and later committed suicide. Damn. When Marcus learned that Stuart Lake had discovered the existence of Blaylock, she successfully demanded that he omit her from his book, I Married Wyatt Earp. After Marcus arrived in Tombstone with Behan, Earp apparently developed an interest in her, although there are no records in Tombstone of a relationship between them. Tombstone diarist? I've never seen that word before. George W. Parsons never mentioned seeing Wyatt and Sadie together, and neither did John Clum in his memoirs. But Earp and Marcus certainly knew each other, as Behan and Earp had offices above the Crystal Palace Saloon. In April 1882, shortly after he left Tombstone, there is evidence that Earp had developed feelings for Marcus. Don't say it like that, man. Marcus is a dude. Say the full name. Marcus is a dude's name. This is not a gay relationship going on here. The Earp posse, by that time on their vendetta ride, arrived in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I just saw the ALB and immediately knew what that said. If I tried to sound that out without ever knowing that Albuquerque was a thing, I would have no idea how to say this. Albuquerque, New Mexico, intending to stay for 2 weeks. Wyatt and Holiday had been fast friends since Holiday saved Earp's life in Dodge City 3 years prior. Hey, I remember that. Wyatt was staying with prominent businessman Henry N. Jaffa, who was also president of the local board of trade and first mayor of Albuquerque. Like Marcus, Jaffa was Jewish. During their stay in Albuquerque, Earp and Holiday ate at the Retreat restaurant owned by Fat Charlie. That's a name. Former New Mexico Territory Governor Miguel Otero, who is this? The second. Was an American politician, businessman, and author who served as the 16th. Bring that back. Bring it back. 16th governor of New Mexico Territory from 1897 to 1906. He was the son of okay. Wrote in 1940 that Holiday said something about Earp becoming a damn Jew boy. Okay. YouTube, don't pull me down for that one. Wikipedia said it. Earp became angry and left. Jaffa told me later that Earp's woman was a Jewess. Earp did mezuzah when entering the house. I've heard of this. What is that? Parchment inscribed with... Okay. The Albuquerque Evening Review reported that Doc Holliday became intoxicated and indiscreet in his remarks, which offended Wyatt and caused the party to break up, Holiday going with Tipton. Earp's anger at Holliday's ethnic slur may indicate that his feelings for Marcus... Dude, even back then we had a problem with anti-Semitism. For Marcus were more serious at the time than is commonly known. The information in the letter is compelling because at the time, in the 1940s, the possibility of a prior relationship between Wyatt Earp and Josephine Marcus while in Tombstone was unknown. Otero, I think it's Otero, could know these things only if he had a relationship with someone who had personal knowledge of the people involved. Marcus went to great lengths to sanitize her own and Wyatt's history. For example, as mentioned, she worked hard to keep her name in the name of Wyatt's second wife, Maddie, out of Stuart Lake's 1931 book, Wyatt Earp, Frontier Marshal. I think that is still going on today, really, really badly, where a bunch of politicians And people in power, people who are famous, do terrible, terrible things behind the scenes, and they really, really work hard to try and keep all that shit covered up for history. They don't want history to see them in that light. They want history to see them as like making movies about their life later, and it's just all the cool stuff. And Marcus threatened litigation to keep it that way. Marcus also told Earp's biographers and others that Earp never drank, did not own gambling saloons, and that he never provided prostitutes to customers, although strong evidence to the contrary exists. How about that? Losing the undersheriff position left Earp without a job in Tombstone. However, he and his brothers were beginning to make some money on their mining claims in the area. In January 1881, Oriental Saloon owner Milt Joyce. That's a name. That is quite a name. Nobody's named Milt anymore. I don't even know if I know anybody with the last name Joyce. I know an old lady with a first name Joyce. Oriental Saloon owner Milt Joyce gave Earp a quarter interest in the Faro concession at the Oriental Saloon in exchange for his services as a manager and enforcer. Gambling was regarded as a legitimate profession at the time. Earp invited his friend Pat Masterson to Tombstone to help him run the Faro tables in the saloon. I'm going to say Faro, actually. I think it's Faro. And he telegraphed, I've never heard of this game. Is it a game? Hold on, I am going to have to look it up. Faro. Faro was the most popular card game in the Old West, dominating gambling halls. Okay. So it was a game. It is pronounced Faro. Earp invited his friend Bat Masterson to Tombstone to help him run the Faro tables in the saloon, and he telegraphed Luke Short in June 1881 to offer him a job as a Faro dealer. He was an Old West gunfighter, cowboy, U.S. Army scout, dispatch writer, gambler. He was a lot. Boxing promoter and saloon owner. He survived numerous gunfights. Okay. Masterson remained until April 1881 when he returned to Dodge City to assist his brother Jim Masterson. I think I've heard of this story. I used to watch Old West shows with my grandpa. On October 8th, 1881, Doc Holliday got into a dispute with cowboy and outlaw John Tyler in the Oriental Saloon. A rival gambling concession operator hired someone to disrupt Wyatt's business. When Tyler started a fight after losing a bet, Wyatt threw him out of the saloon. Holliday later, I imagine he actually literally threw him out. Probably didn't happen that way. Holliday later wounded Oriental owners Milt Joyce and his partner William Parker and was convicted of assault. Facing down a lynch mob, Michael O'Rourke killed Henry Schneider, chief engineer of the Tombstone Mining and Milling Company, and said that it was in self-defense. Schneider was well liked, and a mob of miners quickly gathered and threatened to lynch O'Rourke on the spot. Lake's biography describes Earp single-handedly dispersing the mob, but the epitaph gave primary credit to Ben Sippy. These names, man, they get me. It was city marshal of Tombstone, blah, 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 blah. Okay. For calming the crowd, assisted by Virgil Earp, Wyatt Earp, and Johnny Behan. Nevertheless, Lake's account added to Earp's modern legend as a lawman. Stagecoach robbers kill two. Tensions increased between the Earps and both the Clantons and the McLaurys through 1881. Three cowboys attempted to rob a Kinnear and Company stagecoach. I've never heard of this. What is that? I guarantee it's a company. I couldn't find much information on it. 3 cowboys attempted to rob a Kinnear and Company stagecoach on March 15, 1881 at 10 p.m., which was reportedly carrying $26,000, almost $1 million, dang, in 2024, in silver bullion. Bullion? I think it's bullion. I don't know. Bullion. Sure. The amount of bullion that the stagecoach actually carried is questioned by modern researchers because it would have weighed about 1,600 pounds. The value of silver at the time was $1 an ounce, a significant weight for a team of horses. According to Wells Fargo agent John Q. Jackson, a stagecoach typically carried an express box containing bullion weighing only 100 to 150 pounds. The holdup took place near Benson, during which the robbers killed driver Eli Budd Philpott and passenger Peter Roerig? Sure. The Earps and a posse tracked the men down and arrested Luther King, who confessed that he had been holding the reins while Bill Leonard, Harry the Kid Head, and Jim Crane robbed the stage. They arrested King, and Sheriff Johnny Behan escorted him to jail. But somehow King walked in the front door and out the back door. During the hearing into the gunfight at the OK Corral, Wyatt testified that he offered Ike Clanton and Frank McLaury the $3,600 in Wells Fargo reward money, $1,200 per robber, in return for information about the identities. Okay. For information about the identities of the three robbers. He testified that he had other motives for his plan. He hoped that arresting the murderers would boost his chances for election as Cochise County Sheriff. He told the court that he had taken the extra step of obtaining a second copy of a telegram for Clanton from Wells Fargo, ensuring that the reward applied for capturing the killers dead or alive. According to testimony given by Wyatt and Virgil, both McLaury and Clanton agreed to provide information to assist in capturing Leonard, Head, and Crane, but they never had a chance to fulfill the agreement. All three suspects were killed when attempting other robberies. Well, damn. Yeah, you shouldn't have been trying to do robberies. That sucks for you, man. In his testimony at the court hearing, Clanton said that Earp did not want to capture the men, but to kill them. He told the court that Earp... How would you know that? How? Okay. He told the court that Earp wanted to conceal his family's involvement in the Benson stage robbery and had sworn him to secrecy, and that Morgan Earp had confided in him that he and Wyatt had piped off $1,400 to Doc Holliday and Bill Leonard, who were supposed to be on the stage the night when Bud Philpott was killed. Clanton told the court, "I was not going to have anything to do with helping to capture," and then he corrected himself, "kill Bill Leonard, Crane, and Harry Head." Clanton denied having any knowledge of the Wells Fargo telegram confirming the reward money. September stagecoach robbery. Meanwhile, tensions increased between the Earps and the McLaurys when cowboys robbed the passenger stage on the Sandy Bob line in the Tombstone area on September 8th, bound for nearby Bisbee, Arizona. The masked robbers robbed the passengers in the strongbox, but they were recognized by their voices and language. They were identified as Deputy Sheriff Pete Spence, an alias for Elliot Larkin Ferguson. Elliot Ferguson, that's quite a name. And Deputy Sheriff Frank Stillwell. A business partner of Spence's, Stillwell was fired a short while later as a deputy sheriff for Sheriff Behan for county tax accounting irregularities. He was stealing money. Wyatt and Virgil Earp rode with, or he just was bad at his job. I don't know. Wyatt and Virgil Earp rode with the sheriff's posse to track the stage robbers, and Wyatt discovered an unusual boot heel print in the mud. The posse checked with a shoemaker in Bisbee and found a matching heel that he had just removed from Stillwell's boot. A further check of a Bisbee Corral turned up both Spence and Stillwell, who were arrested by sheriff's deputies Billy Breckenridge and Nagel. I'm gonna say Nagel. Finagle. Spence and Stillwell were arraigned on the robbery charges before Justice Wells Spicer, who set their bail at $7,000 each. That's a lot of money. They were released after paying the bail, but they were rearrested by Virgil for the Bisbee robbery a month later on October 13th in the new federal charge of interfering with a mail carrier. The newspapers, however, reported that they had been arrested for a different stage robbery, which occurred on October 8th near Contention City, Arizona, less than 2 weeks before the OK Corral shootout. And this final incident may have been misunderstood by the McLaurys. Wyatt and Virgil were still out of town for the Spence and Stillwell hearing when Frank McLaury confronted Morgan Earp, telling him that the McLaurys would kill the Earps if they tried to arrest Spence, Stillwell, or the McLaurys again. Oh, here we go. The gunfight at the OK Corral. I think this is the one that most people know about Wyatt Earp. The tension came to a head between the Earps and the Cowboys on Wednesday, October 26, 1881. Ike Clanton, Billy Claiborne, and other cowboys had been threatening to kill the Earps for several weeks, and Tombstone City Marshal Virgil Earp learned that they were armed and had gathered near the OK Corral. He asked Wyatt, Morgan Earp, and Doc Holliday to assist him, as he intended to disarm them. I think a bunch of this kind of stuff started back then. I think a bunch of stuff happened that caused all of this to happen too, and I think it has snowballed, stuff like this happening all over the place to get to what's happening to today. So I think all of these bad things happening way back when, they do have a butterfly effect and affect everything going in the future. He asked Wyatt, Morgan, Earp, and Doc Holliday to assist him as he had intended to disarm them. Wyatt had been deputized by Virgil a few days prior as a temporary assistant marshal, and Morgan was a deputy city marshal. Around 3 p.m., the Earps and Holliday headed towards Fremont Street, where the cowboys had been gathering. They found 5 cowboys in a vacant lot adjacent to the OK Corral's rear entrance on Fremont Street. The lot was narrow between the Harwood House and Fly's boarding house and photography studio. Okay. The two parties were initially only about 6 to 10 feet, 1.8 to 3 meters apart. Like, Ike Clanton and Billy Claiborne fled, but Tom and Frank McLaury and Billy Clanton stood their ground and were killed. Morgan was clipped by a shot across his back that nicked both shoulder blades and a vertebrae. Vertebra? Vertebra is just one. Virgil was shot through the calf, and Holliday was grazed by a bullet. Wyatt came through the shootout unharmed. What a badass. Charged with murder. Ike Clanton filed murder charges against the Earps and Holliday on October 30th. Justice Wells Spicer convened a preliminary hearing on October 31st, on Halloween, to determine whether enough evidence existed to go to trial. In an unusual proceeding, he took written and oral testimony from about 30 witnesses over more than a month. Sheriff Behan testified that the cowboys had not resisted but had thrown up their hands and turned out their coats to show that they were not armed. He said that Tom McLaury threw open his coat to show that he was not armed and that the first 2 shots were fired by the Earp party. Behan insisted that Holliday had fired first using a nickel-plated revolver, although other witnesses reported seeing him carrying a messenger shotgun immediately beforehand. Ooh, okay, what is that? Messenger shotgun? Coach gun is a double-barreled shotgun, generally with side-by-side barrels, 18 to 24 inches long. It's called a cut-down shotgun. And messenger shotgun from the use of such shotguns on stagecoaches by shotgun messengers in the American Wild West. Okay. Oh, okay, it's one of these. I've seen these coach guns. I didn't know that's what they were, though. Earps hired experienced trial lawyer Thomas Fitch as defense counsel. Since Virgil was confined to a bed due to his wounds, Wyatt testified in a written statement that he drew his gun only after Clanton and McLaury went for their pistols. He detailed the Earps' previous troubles with the Clantons and McLaurys and explained that they had intended to disarm the cowboys, and that his party had fired in self-defense. Fitch produced contradictory testimony from prosecution witnesses during cross-examination, during which they appeared to dodge his questions or said that they could not remember. Justice Spicer ruled on November 30th that there was not enough evidence to indict the men. He said that the evidence indicated that the Earps and Holliday acted within the law, and that Virgil had deputized Holliday and Wyatt. The Earps and Holliday were free, but their reputations had been tarnished. The cowboys and Tombstone looked upon the Earps as robbers and murderers and plotted revenge. Cowboys' revenge. Virgil was ambushed on December 28th while walking between saloons on Allen Street and Tombstone, and he was maimed by a shotgun blast that struck his left arm and shoulder. Ike Clanton's hat was found in the back of the building across Allen Street from where the shots were fired. Wyatt wired the U.S. Marshal Crawley P. Dake, asking to be appointed Deputy U.S. Marshal with authority to select his own deputies. Dake granted the request in late January and provided the Earps with some funds that he borrowed from Wells Fargo, variously reported as between $500 and $3,000. In mid-January, Earp's ally Rickabaugh, I like that name, sold the Oriental Saloon to Earp's adversary Milt Joyce, and Wyatt sold his gambling concessions at the hotel. The Earps also raised some funds from sympathetic business owners in town. Wyatt and Virgil submitted their resignations to Dake on February 2nd, 1882, being tired of the criticism leveled against them but he refused to accept them because their accounts had not been settled. That same day, Wyatt sent a message to Ike Clanton that he wanted to reconcile their differences, which Clanton refused. That day, Clanton was also acquitted of the charges against him in the shooting of Virgil. The defense brought in 7 witnesses who testified that Clanton was in Charleston at the time of the shooting. The Earps needed more funds to pay for the extra deputies and associated expenses, as contributions from supportive business owners were not enough. On February 13th, Wyatt mortgaged his home to lawyer James G. Howard for $365. Man, gave up his house for $12,000. He was never able to repay the loan, and Howard foreclosed on the house in 1884. Damn. Morgan Earp was murdered on March 18th while playing billiards, shot by gunmen firing from a dark alley through a door window into the billiard room. He was struck in the right side, the bullet shattered his spine, passed through his left side, and lodged in the thigh of George A.B. Barry, while another round narrowly missed him. A doctor was summoned and Morgan was moved from the floor to a nearby coach, while the murderers escaped in the dark. He died 40 minutes later. Wyatt felt that he could not rely on civil justice and decided to take matters into his own hands and kill the murderers himself. Oh man. Oh man, what a badass. I mean, kind of true. Kind of true, and it's even ringing true more and more today on a much bigger scale. Earp Vendetta Ride. The day after Morgan's murder, Deputy U.S. Marshal Wyatt Earp formed a posse made up of his brothers James and Warren, Doc Holliday, Sherman McMaster, Jack Turkey Creek Johnson, Charles Hairlip Charlie Smith, Dan Tipton, and Texas Jack Vermillion. Dude, these names. To protect the family and pursue the suspects, paying them $5 a day. They took Morgan's body to the railhead, and Benson and James accompanied it to the family home in Colton, California, where Morgan's wife and parents waited to bury him. The posse guarded Virgil and Allie to Tucson, where they had heard that Frank Stillwell and other cowboys were waiting to kill Virgil. The next morning, Frank Stillwell's body was found alongside the tracks with a shotgun bullet in his chest. Shotgun bullet? Okay. Wyatt and 5 other federal lawmen were indicted for murdering him, and Tucson Justice of the Peace, Charles Mayer, issued warrants for their arrest. The Earp posse briefly returned to Tombstone, where Sheriff Behan tried to stop them, but was brushed aside. Hairlip Charlie and Warren remained in Tombstone. I'm losing it. I'm losing the capabilities to be able to read. And the rest set out for Pete Spence's wood camp in the Dragoon Mountains. Spence was absent, but they found and killed Florentino Indian Charlie Cruz. There's a lot of Charlies. Cruz? I think it's Cruz. 2 days later, they stumbled into the wood camp of William Brocious, Pony Deal, and other outlaw cowboys near Iron Springs in the Whetstone Mountains. According to reports from both sides, the two sides immediately exchanged gunfire. The Earp party withdrew to find protection from the heavy gunfire, except for Wyatt and Texas Jack Vermillion, whose horse was shot. Hey, why you gotta be shooting the horses? That's not cool. That's so disrespectful, man. Curly Bill fired at Wyatt with a shotgun, but missed. 18 months earlier, Wyatt had protected Curly Bill against a lynch mob. He also provided testimony that helped spare Curly Bill a murder trial for killing Marshal Fred White. Wyatt returned to Curly Bill's gunfire with his own shotgun, hitting him in the chest from about 50 feet away, causing him to fall into the water's edge of the spring and die. Dude, this is so cool. This is such a cool story. It's probably not cool when it happened. Wyatt then fired his revolver, mortally wounding Johnny Barnes in the chest and wounding Milt Hicks in the arm. Vermillion tried to retrieve his rifle that was wedged in the scabbard under his fallen horse, exposing himself to the cowboys' gunfire, but Holliday helped him get to cover. Earp told biographer Stuart Lake that both sides of his long coat were shot through, and another bullet struck his boot heel. Ed Colburn, in a letter published in the Ford County Globe on May 23, 1882, wrote that he'd visited with the brothers Earp in Gunnison, Colorado. He relayed Earp's story about how his overcoat was hit on both sides of his body by a charge of buckshot and that his saddle horn was shot off. John Flood wrote, "The saddle horn had been splintered. His coat hung in shreds. There were 3 holes through the legs of his trousers, 5 holes through the crown of his sombrero, and 3 through the brim." Earp was finally able to get on his horse and retreat with the rest of the posse. Some modern researchers have found that most saddle horns by this time were made of steel, not wood. Earp had several versions of the story in which he had trouble remounting his horse because his cartridge belt had slipped down his legs. He was never wounded in any of his confrontations, which added to his mystique. Like the mysterious stranger from Fallout. The posse left the cowboys behind and rode north to the Percy Ranch, but they weren't welcomed by Hugh and Jim Percy, who feared the cowboys. They left around 3 a.m. on March 27th after a meal and some rest. They arrived near Tombstone and met with supporters, including Hairlip Charlie and Warren Earp. That same day, the posse arrived at the Sierra Bonita Ranch, owned by Henry Hooker, a wealthy and prominent rancher. That night, Dan Tipton caught the stagecoach out of Tombstone and headed for Benson, carrying $1,000 from mining owner and Earp supporter E.B. Gage for the posse. Hooker congratulated Earp on killing Curly Bill, and Wyatt told him that he wanted to buy new mounts. Hooker was known for his purebred stallions and ran more than 500 brood mares, which produced horses renowned for their speed, beauty, and temperament. He provided Wyatt and his posse with new mounts, but refused to take their money. Behan's posse was then observed in the distance, and Hooker suggested that Earp make his stand there, but Earp moved into the hills about 3 miles, 5 kilometers distant near Riley Hill. Earp's posse wasn't found by the local posse led by Cochise County Sheriff John Behan, although Behan's party trailed them for many miles. In the middle of April 1882, the Earp posse left the Arizona Territory and headed east into New Mexico Territory and then into Colorado. The coroner reports credited the Earp posse with killing Frank Stillwell, Curly Bill, Indian Charlie, and Johnny Barnes in their 2-week-long ride. In 1888, Earp gave an interview to California historian Hubert Howe Bancroft, during which he claimed to have killed over a dozen stage robbers, murderers, and cattle thieves in his time as a lawman. This seems like it's probably a good place to stop, so tune in for episode 3 when we talk about Wyatt Earp's life after Tombstone. Like, comment, subscribe, ring the bell for all notifications if you'd like to see when all of these videos drop, and it's usually going to be like 1 a week, I think. I'm going to try and keep it on that schedule around Saturday. Does that sound good to you? See you in the next one.